Almighty God, in your tender love for the human race, you sent your Son, our Savior, Jesus Christ, to take upon him our nature and to suffer death upon the cross, giving us the example of his great humility. Mercifully grant that we may walk in the way of his suffering and also share in his resurrection. Through Jesus Christ our Lord, who lives and reigns with you and the Holy Spirit, one God, forever and ever. Amen. The Passion of our Lord Jesus Christ according to Luke. The assembly of elders rose as a body and brought Jesus before Pilate. They began to accuse him, saying, "We found this man perverting our nation, forbidding us to pay taxes to the emperor, and saying that he himself is the Messiah, a king." Then Pilate asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" He answered, "You say so." Then Pilate said to the chief priests and the crowds, "I find no basis for an accusation against this man." But they were insistent and said, "He stirs up the people by teaching throughout all Judea, from Galilee where he began, even to this place." When Pilate heard this, he asked whether the man was a Galilean. And when he learned that he was under Herod's jurisdiction, he sent him off to Herod, who himself was in Jerusalem at the time. When Herod saw Jesus, he was glad, for he had been wanting to see him for a long time, because he had heard about him, and was hoping to see him perform some sign. He questioned him in some length, but Jesus gave no answer. The chief priests and the scribes stood by, vehemently accusing him. Even Herod, with his soldiers, treated him with contempt and mocked him. Then he put an elegant robe on him and sent him back to Pilate. That same day, Herod and Pilate became friends with each other. Before this, they had been enemies. Pilate then called together the chief priests, the leaders, and the people, and said to them, "You brought me this man as one who was perverting the people. And here I have examined him in your presence, and have not found this man guilty of any of your charges against him. Neither has Herod, for he sent him back to us. Indeed, he has done nothing to deserve death. I will therefore have him flogged and release him." Then they all shouted out together, "Away with this fellow! Release Barabbas for us!" This was a man who had been put in prison for an insurrection that had taken place in the city and for murder. Pilate, wanting to release Jesus, addressed them again, but they kept shouting, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" A third time he said to them, "Why? What evil has he done? I have found in him no ground for the sentence of death. I will therefore have him flogged and then release him." But they kept urgently demanding with loud shouts that he should be crucified, and their voices prevailed. So Pilate gave his verdict that their demand should be granted. He released the man they asked for, the one who had been put in prison for insurrection and murder, and he handed Jesus over as they wished. As they led him away, they seized a man, Simon of Cyrene, who was coming from the country, and they laid the cross on him and made him carry it behind Jesus. A great number of people followed him, and among them were women who were beating their breasts and wailing for him. But Jesus turned to them and said, "Daughters of Jerusalem, do not weep for me, but weep for yourselves and for your children, for the days are surely coming when they will say, 'Blessed are the barren and the wombs that never bore, and the breasts that never nursed.' Then they will begin to say to the mountains, 'Fall on us,' and to the hills, 'Cover us.' For if we do this when the wood is green, what will happen 2 others also, who were criminals, were led away to be put to death. Would you please stand? When they came to the place that is called the Skull, they crucified Jesus there with the criminals, one on his right and one on his left. Then Jesus said, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." And they cast lots to divide his clothing. And the people stood by, watching. But the leaders scoffed at him, saying, "He saved others. Let him save himself if he is the Messiah of God, his chosen one." The soldiers also mocked him, coming up and offering him sour wine and saying, "If you are the king of the Jews, save yourself." There was also an inscription over him, "This is the King of the Jews." One of the criminals who were hanged there kept deriding him and saying, "Are you not the Messiah? Save yourself and us." But the other one rebuked him, saying, "Do you not fear God, since you are under the same sentence of condemnation? And we indeed have been condemned justly, for we are getting what we deserve for our deeds. But this man has done nothing wrong." Then he said, "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." He replied, "Truly I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise." It was now about noon, and darkness came over the whole land until 3 in the afternoon, while the sun's light failed, and the curtain of the temple was torn in two. Then Jesus cried with a loud voice, said, "Father, into your hands I commend my spirit." Having said this, he breathed his last. When the centurion saw what had taken place, he praised God and said, "Certainly this man was innocent." And when all the crowds who had gathered there for this spectacle saw what had taken place, they returned home, beating their breasts. But all his acquaintances, including the women who had followed him from Galilee, stood at a distance, watching these things. We have to find ways to make this day special. And so, when my friends and I decided to crucify that Jew, we thought we'd have a little fun. We thought we'd have a little fun. There were 3 crucifixions that day. And, you know, when you've done 100 murders, what's 3 more? It doesn't matter. You just try to be as sadistic as possible. We have to put on a show for the crowd, for Pilate and Herod. You know, the festival of the Passover is here. We want to keep those Jews down. And so I got my biggest hammer today, and I missed a couple of times because I really wanted these guys to hurt. You just have no idea how powerful one feels when you're driving that nail into that human flesh. And it rips apart, and that warm blood spurts all over your face. And then you nail those feet, and you hear them cry, and then you hoist them up, and they begin to suffocate and moan and groan. It is one of the most wonderful things a soldier can do in Rome. I have a special hammer just for crucifixions. Just for crucifixions. I wouldn't use this to build a house or anything because it's balanced just so right, with one swing right through the hand, another swing through the other. And of course, since there's there's more bones in the feet, you got to swing a couple of more times, and every one of us takes a bet and sees how many times it's going to take us to nail that guy to the cross. Been doing it for 13 years, and nothing like today has ever happened. Nothing like today has ever happened. You know, this crazy man who thinks he's God came into Jerusalem riding on a donkey, saying he was the Messiah, the one who was going to save the world. He couldn't even do a card trick. He couldn't pull a rabbit out of his hat. All he did was go in and raise hell in the temple and proclaim himself to be the Son of God. And the Jews got all upset about it. You know, their God is a false God anyway. Our Roman gods are the true gods. But when those Jews get all riled up in Passover, we've got to put them down. We've got to put them down. And then those other two criminals, you know, we crucify criminals every day. We crucify hundreds a year. But this guy was different. This guy was different. You know, usually you go into the trial, they say that you're guilty, they flog you to within an inch of your life, there's blood all over your back, the bones exposed, they throw a cross on you, carry you out to the Golgotha, nail you to the tree, and you're dead. This guy, he got handed over back and forth, back and forth. The Pharisees and Sadducees, all the leaders of the Jews, they handed him over to Pilate. And Pilate, he's a wise man. He knew he was in trouble, because if this was the king of the Jews, there would be a riot. And so the leaders of the Jews kind of stirred up the crowd and said, we don't want him around anymore. He wasn't the Messiah they were looking for. You know, they were looking for somebody to overthrow us. But he was coming preaching peace and love. And they didn't want that peace and love stuff. They wanted a revolt. And when that didn't happen, they gave it to Pilate. And Pilate, being the ultimate powerful politician, says, hey, he's not under my jurisdiction. Herod just happens to be in town, so we'll send him over to Herod. And Herod's no fool either. He might be a dirty, rotten scoundrel that'll kill anybody, including his own family. But he knows that he's not going to go up against Rome, and he's not going to go up against the religious leaders. So what's he do? He sends him back to Pilate. Hands him over again. And Pilate is really screwed now and says, what am I going to do? He says, well, I'll let the crowd decide. And he hands him over to the will of the crowd. And they got so riled up. You know, crucified. There's nothing like bloodletting to get a group of people together to see a good old killing. And so they came to me. The sergeant said, we've got 3 for you today. The first 2, just your normal everyday crooks. But this Jesus fellow, he was so kind and so meek and took his suffering in stride. We beat the hell out of him with the whip that's got the hooks on it that just rips the flesh off your body. And he just stayed there. He didn't cry out. He didn't beg for mercy. He just prayed. And usually after that, they're so weak they can't carry their cross, but he started to, and then they got this guy from Cyrene to carry it. And by the time we got up to Golgotha, there was something about this man's face, even in all the suffering. There was a light that came from his eyes that was so filled with love. And yet we had a job to do, and so he had some good clothes, and we gambled for him. I didn't get him. It's like playing the Powerball, I guess, for you guys. You roll the dice and you don't win. But then it was my turn. We laid it down, and I just hoisted the three of them up. And one of the criminals, being just like a regular old criminal, gets in on the taunting and the yelling and telling Jesus he's a fake. And asking him to jump off the cross and save all of them. But the other criminal there, he saw the same thing I saw. He saw deep, deep love. And he turns to Jesus and says, "Take me with you." And Jesus says, "Today I promise you'll be in paradise with me." And that struck me to the heart. Here he is on the cross talking to these criminals and saying they're going to this heaven place. And all the while, he's gasping for air. He doesn't have much time to live. And he's proclaiming God's goodness. Handed over from one person to another throughout the whole time. Through all his suffering, he is still living his principles. And finally, when I get it to it good. And we raised him up. And he looks right down and says, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they're doing." I've heard all kinds of things yelled from the cross. Profanity, curses, screams and wails, but I have never in my 13 years heard anyone say, "Forgive me." And it made me begin to think that maybe what I've been doing, crucifying all these people, is not what God intended for me to do. Maybe God is calling me to do something else. Because this man, you could tell he was innocent. He was innocent. And all he did was pray. From the time he was handed over one to another, to another, to another, handed over to the people and begged God to forgive us. And then at the end, his prayer is, "Into your hands I commend my spirit." With all this suffering and pain, he still believes in his God. I can't understand it. I can't fathom it. But maybe it's the suffering and the trust in his God. I heard him say earlier this week that God was in control. That we need to take our hands off what steers our lives and let God steer it. And when he was talking on the cross, it came back to me. Maybe when I'm handed over to one of my officers who wants to penalize me or drop me out of the Roman soldier, out of the army, maybe they'll have mercy on me. Maybe when I'm handed over for arrest or something, I'll trust in this new God of his. Because being in control of my life has only allowed me to do one thing. And that's to murder, to kill, to destroy families, and maybe kill God. Maybe I have post-traumatic stress disorder from killing so many people. Maybe I need help. Maybe I need to be handed over to a priest so that I can combine my suffering with this Jesus the Christ. Maybe when I feel betrayed, when I'm broken and beaten, can take my hands off the controls and allow God to act in me as he did through this Jesus fellow. I don't know. Maybe it was just because it was cloudy today. But they say the temple curtain got torn in half. The earthquake. There was something special about this man. Truly, he was the Son of God. Did I just say that? Truly, he was the Son of God. And I had a hand in his death. So did you. So did you. So did you. Perhaps if the rumors are true, he will rise on the third day and become the Prince of Peace. And if that happens, maybe I'll put down my hammer and my whip and my hatred and turn myself over to God.